Hello, everybody, and welcome to Shadow at Night. This is Wednesday, July the 3rd, 2024. On the show tonight, freedom advocate, legal advisor. I don't know that there's a correct term to describe this guy and the very few others across the country that do this. Legal advocate, maybe? I don't know. You may have seen the post I put up on social media a couple of hours ago. Who is Dave Freedom, and why is he and others like him so important to fighting back against the neo-Marxist globalist movement that we're facing? We're going to explore all of that tonight. And we have some great news about a legal victory that happened last week. Dave is going to tell us about that as well. And yes, Dave Freedom is actually his name. That's his name. It's not just something somebody say, hey, you're Dave Freedom. That's a nickname. No, this is Dave Freedom joins the show tonight. We also have so many other things to get to tonight. It looks like most of that is going to be covered in the extension on shadowdavis.com. So if you're not a member over there, an all-access member, become one, and you get to see all of the extra goodies I have for you tonight, including, and here's a guy I've been trying to get on the show for a while. He's a Canadian living in Japan. His name is Ben Fulford. And he's I would love to get him and Anderson on the show. And maybe David Icke. That would be a hell of a show. Boyd Anderson, Ben Fulford, David Icke. That would be, wow. You want to talk about going deep. They go deep. Anyway, Ben Fulford has put out he puts out a daily video, and sometimes it's sometimes it's whoa, other times it's this is way too QAnon for me, man. I'm sorry, but I cannot buy this stuff. Where are you getting your information from? But other times, boom, nail on the head, hammer on the head, whatever. He is bang on with a lot of the things he says, but sometimes it takes a few weeks for those predictions to come to full fruition, and it's amazing. Apparently, not one but two black swan events will happen somewhere in North America before the U.S. presidential election in November that could possibly prevent people from going to the polls, or if it doesn't, will prevent them from voting at the polls. They'll have to vote online. Some new system that they're going to bring out and say, hey, you can vote online now. Not even mail-in. It's vote in online. It's all secure. Don't worry. We got you. Yeah. So that's speculation. I have no idea. Also, who is going to run as Trump's vice president? And is Biden going to run at all? If not, who replaces? All of that information is coming up on the extension, and some of it will happen here on the social media part of the show tonight. We got you covered to some extent anyway. We'll be live on socials until 9 o'clock Central, and Dave Freedom is going to join in just a couple of minutes. The Harper family coming on, Garnet Harper's family, coming on Friday night to tell the story of their brother and husband who died because he wouldn't take the injection. He couldn't get a kidney transplant because he wouldn't take the injection. He died just over a year ago, and the family is talking about it publicly now. They talked about it in Beausejour a couple of weekends ago, and they're going to join the show Friday night. So yes, there is a show coming up on Friday night. Hopefully you can be here for that. The Shadow at Night live, there's Ben Fulford. The Shadow at Night live stream is brought to you by Canada Nano Silver, CanadaNanoSilver.ca. The Nano Silver Gel Pump. Now, Nano Gel, what is that stuff? It soothes your skin. It's sunburn season after all, dry skin season after all. You want to take care of your skin. You don't want all those chemical additives in your skin, right? Right? So you want something that's pure and natural with the power of silverceutical technology. Treat your skin to the natural and soothing effects of Nano Silver Gel in an easy-to-use pump style. Apply it daily, anywhere on your face or body or both, to help soften, soothe, hydrate, and promote natural healing quickly. And believe it or not, for those of you who have used this product, you know that if you get a cut or a scrape or something, this stuff, you put this stuff on there, it's better. It's better now. Quickly calms and cools your skin, providing relief that can last for hours. It is safe and can be used by infants and adults alike on even the most sensitive skin. It absorbs quickly and can be used under makeup. It's the Nano Silver Gel Pump, available at CanadaNanoSilver.ca. If you're looking for retail locations around the country, you can find them on the Retail Locations tab as they continue to pop up everywhere. Still, there's one province we haven't got yet. I forget which one. I think it might be Quebec. No, Quebec's covered. PEI? One province. One province. They're in 9 of 10 provinces. So go check the retail locations, and if you can see the province that it's not in and you happen to be in it, maybe you want to become a retailer of these awesome products yourself. And to do that, you get a hold of Kevin and Anna through the contact tab at CanadaNanoSilver.ca. CanadaNanoSilver.ca. Let me change this background picture here because I forgot to do that as we were gearing up for the show. I was having a conversation with Dave Freedom, who is standing by and ready to pop on. There we go. There's a nice neutral background. Let's go say some hellos. Who's here watching tonight on Facebook and X? Debbie is in Oakbank. John is watching in Swan River. Hello, Barbara in Glenora. Mireille's watching in Lacombe. Hello, Christine in Enola. Rita's watching in Vaughan, Ontario. Brenda, hello, in Medicine Hat. Murray, Alameda, not California. Dan's watching in Ross, Manitoba tonight. Hello, Tracy in Red Deer. Barb's watching in Southern Manitoba. Ray is watching on YouTube. Stay strong, Patriots. Great message. Thank you, Ray. Hello, Kim in Oka River. Diane's watching from a stormy Regina tonight. Dave is watching in Spruce Grove, Alberta. Edna is watching in Victoria, British Columbia. If you're watching on Facebook tonight, do not be afraid to share this show. Get it out there to as many people as you possibly can. At least like it, for goodness sakes, but definitely share it. Same on X. If you're watching on X, give us a like and a reshare. It goes a long way getting this information out to people. Who's watching on Rumble tonight? Susie Q, Snow Girl, Sisters to Brothers. That's a new one. I haven't seen that. Is that a new viewer or somebody just changed their name? Their Rumble handle. Mouth of the South is back. Hello, Esky Dogs, Nana Sue, Peach Key. Where's Nutsy from Selkirk? I haven't seen Nutsy here for a while. Oh, there's Nutsy. Hey, Nutsy, how you doing? Bentel is here. Cheryl, Mustang Sandy. Yeah, you guys. So get it out there on Rumble. Hit the like button beneath the screen. That highlights the URL above the screen. From there, you can copy and paste to your favorite location. But please, will you hit the thumbs up? And if you have a comment that you want to make on Rumble, and you want me to see it after the show, specifically you want me to look at that comment, put it in the comments, not the chat, because the chat goes away right after the show comes off the air. But the the comments stay, the chat goes. So if you want me to see a comment, put it in the comments. If you just want to chat with the group watching the show tonight on Rumble, then go ahead and put it in the chats. But anyway, thumbs up to the 100 million strong Rumble community. Let's get back on the front page, and hopefully we can get seen by more people, because that's the name of the game here, man. It's getting the word out. It's waking people up. And I've got an idea for that coming up, which I'll get to a little bit later on in the show. You're not going to see Dave Freedom tonight, but you're going to hear Dave Freedom. Dave, you can unmute your mic at any time and say hello to the people.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for having me, Shadow. Appreciate it.
Thanks for coming on. Yeah, really appreciate it. So first of all, there's a reason that we keep you anonymous, and this goes against my policy of, if you want to come on the show, you got to show your face. The reason that Dave doesn't come on, I think it's better for people like Dave to stay anonymous. We can't let the other side see somebody like Dave coming. And usually, to get a story out there, you got to have your face behind it, right? You got to make sure that you let people know you're a real person. But with your name being Dave Freedom and the fact that your face is not on the screen tonight, we're going to have to explain a little bit, Dave, about who you are and why you do this and how you do this. I think the whole thing is absolutely fascinating. So please, and you have been on the show before. It was only a cameo appearance, I think about a year ago, for maybe 10 minutes. But now that we've got you for the entire show tonight, Dave, tell us, please, who you are and why you do what you do and what it is that you do.
Sure, yeah, of course. No, I'm grateful to be here. There's about 4 or 5 really important cases that I want to bring up and bring attention to, so thank you for that. I'm no one special. You know, there's plenty of other people that do what I do. You know, I mean, I when I'm appearing in public, it's not like I put a mask on or hide myself. I happen to be in the car right now as well. But
With the
as
tinted
far
windows, I'm sure, right? The windows are all tinted. You're kind of
they
hunching
actually
over.
are,
You
they
got
are tinted. Yes, they are tinted. Yes, yeah.
the Dave
But yeah,
Mobile, the Freedom Mobile.
yeah, it is my real name. I know that a lot of people accuse me of having a fake name, but it is my real name.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's probably people wondering why on earth would I do that. I was actually just a quick story. I was originally arrested and charged for common nuisance in February 2021 in the city of Toronto, and I was actually the first to have a trial date, so criminal trial date for peacefully protesting, as far as I know in Canada. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool if we just made it R versus freedom? And I thought it would just blow up, and we could bring attention to this because it was the first time I've ever seen, you know, not just me, but people getting arrested for simply walking on the sidewalk. I thought, you know, this is communist China level. What's going on here? This shouldn't
Yeah.
be happening.
Yeah.
And we're outside, so even the far left that want to accuse us of spreading things or whatever. I mean, it was literally outside protesting on the sidewalk.
What
Anyway,
were you were protesting? What were you protesting? Anything in particular, or was it just one of those
sorry,
weekly things?
Because it could have been anything I'm talking about. No, just at the time, as you know, in 2020 and 2021, heavy duty lockdowns, businesses shut down. People couldn't take their kids to the parks. You know, myself included, couldn't take my kids to the parks. So, you know, that was the premise of the protest, basically against the lockdown, the mandates, the lockdowns. It was killing people's businesses. People committing suicide. Obviously, everyone here listening, I'm sure, knows all the stats. They were pretty bad as far as the numbers go. People losing their businesses and their livelihoods. So that was a big deal, and we did that every Saturday at Queen's Park. Eventually moved to Dundas Square, and then back to Queen's Park afterwards. But yeah, no, I was arrested, charged for common nuisance, which was the new way of saying if you protest outside, we're going to get you for this. And it's a very general part of the criminal code. It basically means you're putting people at risk. So by me protesting and you know, apparently leading people is what they put in my disclosure. That put people's lives at risk. They even mentioned how many people died in the city of Toronto, and then compared that to what I was doing, as if to say I was responsible for those deaths. I'm not even making that up. It's serious. So, and the disclosure, of course, you know, had aerial drone footage follow me around for 4 hours. You know, pages and pages, nice colored booklets of what I call my battle wagon, which was a generator and speakers I had in the wagon. There was this sort of big industrial wagon I would tow around the whole city, and basically just have recorded messages as to, you know, how this is unconstitutional, what we should be standing up for ourselves, et cetera, and, you know, PCR tests, whatever, right? Just a whole bunch of stats listing off, getting to the point. And I found that effective, and they didn't want me there. And of course, it worked because when I was arrested, they had banned me from the city of Toronto. If anyone knows Toronto, and they know the 427 to the 404, I couldn't go anywhere between that. That's pretty much the entire downtown core. And if I did, I would be criminally charged for breach.
Well, okay, wait, because we've had this kind of thing come up just lately with Tommy Robinson, who was banned from going to certain areas in Alberta, I think, by the court. Was it the court that banned you from going downtown Toronto?
So what had happened is, as soon as I got arrested, I was processed, and they gave me conditions, and they said basically that you have to abide by these conditions if you want to get out. So initially, I actually refused to sign those conditions. I said I'm not signing them, and they said, fine, we're going to put you back in jail. And now this is the time I knew nothing about the law, absolutely nothing about the law. Like I was my version of the law was completely different, actually. So anyway, not in a bad way, but just not practical. So I said, well, put me back in the cell. Let me think about it. And because I don't want to sign this. And they put me back in there. So I sweated out a little bit. A friend of mine called at the time, Dermot, and we talked a little bit. He knew a little bit more than I did that time, actually, about the law. And, he said, listen, man, just sign it just to get out, and we can fight it afterwards. So I signed the conditions, which was basically, you can't go to Toronto, and et cetera, et cetera. And part of that was because, again, I didn't know any better. They were telling me if I don't sign this, I'm going to stay in jail for 18 months. So I'm thinking to myself, well, really? They can do that? Oh, I guess they can, right?
Wait a minute. That's the cops talking? That's not the judge?
That's the processing officer when I got there. So they didn't say you will.
Can they do that, though, Dave?
So in theory, if the court doesn't allow you bail, then you could stay in there for months. If they say that you didn't sign or you don't have a proper surety, et cetera, et cetera. So in theory, you know, if I knew what I know now, I wouldn't have signed it. But at the time, I really believed that I personally believed I was going to be in there for 18 months. And I thought, okay, I got 3 small kids. That's not good. I mean, we're going to lose the house, and what's going to happen here, right? So
yeah.
And you know, it's funny. I tell people anyway. You know, when you're given a opportunity to get out, sign anything, because here's the thing about the law that I learned: you can fight. It's much easier to fight something when you're out than when you're behind bars. When you're behind bars, you don't have access to case law. You can't talk to people. You can't consult. Right. So
you should read what you're signing, though, right? I mean, it's not like you sign anything.
Yes.
Read it.
Yeah. Sorry. Obviously, yes. I mean, you're not going to give up your firstborn, but it was pretty simple. Like, don't go back to Toronto. If you come back, it's a breach, et cetera, right? It wasn't overly complicated. Anyway, so, but that's my thing. And there's actually case law where they talk about people that do sign things that will violate their rights, but the judges almost always recognize that, well, yeah, they did that not because they were guilty, it's because they wanted to get out of jail. Yeah. So anyway, you're just much better equipped to deal with it when you're out, and it doesn't even take that long. You could, as soon as you get out, again, when you know a little bit more the law, you can then within 30 days get a bail review, present all your case law, get in front of a judge. And if they don't find your story convincing, then you would have stayed in jail anyway. Because in the end, I mean, I'm not saying that every judge is going to think like that judge, but that's just an example that maybe you got that judge. And then the cool thing is, if that judge doesn't see the light or see logic, you can get another judge and do it again. And I think it's every, I believe, 30 for summary and 60 or 90 for indictment. Don't quote me on that, but something like that, when it's a more serious charge.
So how serious is common nuisance anyway? I mean, we heard that, I always thought it was just kind of a light charge, but in the last year, we heard that, no, that can be a pretty serious charge, common nuisance.
Yeah, no, they can give you up to 2 years in jail, criminal record, fines. I mean, the jail was the biggest one, so they could, in theory, give you 2 years. And I won't go too much in detail, but I mean, because it'll take a long time, obviously. But when I was through the process was the punishment. So I, just like many people who were arrested, I had to go back many, many, many times. And that was, to me, my education. They had no idea, but they were actually educating me in how the system works. And as I went through it, I thought, this is horrible. When you know nothing, you're so helpless. Then you're faced, you got to lose your house to finance for a lawyer to help you out. And I'm not saying it's a simple process. You can't be lazy. You really got to do your homework to understand this stuff. Anyway, so when I went through that process, I didn't want other people to go through the same thing I did. So I sort of made it my mission to try and help as many as I can who are arrested for doing nothing but peacefully protesting, freedom of speech, assembly, and help them out. But
it seems to me that Dave,
yep.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, man. Go ahead.
No, just end it by saying, just because people are wondering, well, what happened at the end? So in the end, basically, they dropped the charges last minute, right before my trial date. It was kind of bittersweet because I wanted my trial. At the same time, I thought, well, okay, well, at least maybe I won't go to jail or whatever the case, right? And we didn't know back then that they necessarily were bluffing, because this was the very, very, very beginning, pre-convoy, right?
Yeah.
And they had offered me many times, and they said, listen, we're going to give you jail time. We're going to keep your equipment that's worth about $5,000. That's the speakers, the generator, the wagon, all that stuff, just under $5,000 it cost. And you're facing some serious jail time. But if you just pay us $100, we'll make it go away. Now, at first, it sounds pretty enticing. I was like, wait a second. So I just give you guys $100, my favorite charity, and this goes away? That's it? And I thought, you know what? I can't get up in the morning and live with myself knowing that even though it was an easy out, it would just haunt me. It would just haunt me personally. So I said no numerous times. They pushed and pushed and pushed, and then eventually, after they knew they weren't going to get their way with me, they dropped my charges last minute. And that's sort of where the story came, and the origins of the freedom name, I suppose, as well.
When did you first realize that this whole thing was just a scam? Was it as it happened? When we started hearing about this? Before that, have you been knowledgeable about this since 9/11, or is this just a recent thing for you?
It's so funny you just said that, because I was literally just waiting to say 9/11. Building seven, right? As we all know,
Right.
Building 7. That's your smoking gun. So, yeah, no, that's really when I was awake. I think a lot of people, especially my generation, Gen X, for them, it was 9/11. It's almost like this, this huge wave of consciousness that just became available to the world, and we saw, and a lot of us saw things differently. So no, I mean, I'm not saying the second I heard the C word come out that I automatically assumed, but I was obviously skeptic, like most people were, that, let's say, are awake. But yeah, no, it's that would be my time frame when I woke up.
How long did it take you to start protesting?
Like day one.
You were out there on day one. That's
wait.
Great.
I'm one of the originals in the Queen's Park, Toronto era. Yeah, we were there never missed it. Every Saturday we protested. Everyone would hear my speakers blast on all the condo buildings downtown. It was a great place because you got this huge population that's so dense. So when I would blast the speakers up, we'd walk down, every street, down Yonge Street, across the Spadina, then along Bloor, south to Queen's Park. If anyone knows Toronto, they know what I'm talking about. It's like this giant circle around the entire core. But I loved it because messages were getting out, and I would see people literally just listening to the stats and think, what is this? What's going on here? It doesn't sound like an idiot. I mean, he's mentioning dates and stats and names and where to go and websites, and you look these things up for yourself. So it's not necessarily, tinfoil hat content, I suppose. But
Right.
That was my thing, is I got off and seeing people wake up to the information through the protesting anyway. But it was day one.
What kind of crowds were you getting for these early protests? Were there like 10, 15, 50, 100? What was the biggest? What was the smallest?
The biggest was probably, I'd say, like 10,000. I'd say, or 10,
Really?
maybe 10 plus thousand. Yeah, it was at some points. Those are more like
Wow.
special events, but they range anywhere from like 20 people to 10,000. So pick your weekend. But a lot of times it was maybe a couple hundred people, maybe 50 people, and then it would dwindle down as restrictions lessened. There'd be less people to show up. When restrictions tightened again, more people would show up. So depends on the severity of the situation, right? But the numbers were always in flux. But it was cool. It was always every Saturday, same place. You knew where to go no matter what.
And the cops were always there, I'm sure. Did you make it to the Freedom Convoy at all? I mean, you must have been right into it by
Oh,
then.
yeah. Oh, no, for sure. Yeah, no, I loved it. Was trying to educate people and was there in the front lines. I myself wasn't arrested, but many of my friends were, and people I didn't know who became close friends who I've helped in court. That's ongoing battles as we speak. I could talk about a case now that I guess that probably most people don't even know about.
Well, you know what? Before we get to talking about these cases, Dave, because you've been involved in a few, and I want to talk definitely about that one that Chris Weisdorf was involved in, where you got the result last week. How did you jam all of this legal knowledge into your brain in such a short period of time? Because as you say, 3 years ago or 3.5 years ago, when you got stuck in jail, you didn't know anything. And now you're actually advocating legally for people with all kinds of knowledge about Canadian law. Is it just certain sections of the law that you're absolutely versed in, or have you force-fed yourself the whole thing?
Yeah, so I mean, to me, the entire process was the education, and my motivation to learn as much as I could was the feeling of hopelessness. Again, not having hundreds of thousands for lawyers, maybe not hundreds of thousands, but you know what I mean. Understanding, why you're in this position. Can they really do this to us? I mean, can they get away with this? Is this legal? I thought we had a charter at the time, right? I mean, that's what everyone thought. So my motivation to learn as much as I could was the day I got arrested, and then figuring it out from there, and then using that knowledge to try and help other people. That was my goal, and that's how I get off, is by helping.
Yeah, man.
others.
But I mean, like, I get it, but I read the law, right? Not like you, but I'll read a law because I want to brush up on it before I do a show one night. And sometimes I have to read it like 4 or 5 times to make sure I absolutely understand what it means, what its intent is. And even then, I'm not too sure after that. Like, how did you manage to put yourself
in all fairness,
the crash course on the law, man? I mean, you know all of this stuff. If I were to ask you a question, you could probably answer it just like that, right? A legal one.
Yeah, maybe not, but I mean, potentially. But I mean, I have the advantage maybe that you did in self-preservation as well. I mean, because I was this naive, guy protesting, thinking he knew the law, and now being told he's facing, 2 years in jail because the Crown pulled out all stops to try and to scare me. So the advantage I had in that respect is that I was forced into it. So in that self-preservation mode as well, I didn't care if it was 3 a.m. and I'm researching something, right? So I was it's just time. That's all it is. I mean, it's you don't necessarily even need superior intelligence. I think in the end, you got to put the time into it and understand what case law is, how it applies. That you can't just say what you want in court. There's court decorum. There's ways to do things. And just before we continue, I'm just going to say very quickly, I'm not providing any legal advice. I'm not a lawyer or educated to be one. And I was going to say strictly entertainment, but I'll just say I'm not providing legal advice. just to put that out there.
It's like my cousin Vinny, right? Like, hey,
yeah,
oh, these two Utes. Do you have you been in court? Have you advocated for people in court like a lawyer? Is that even allowed? You have done that.
It is. Yeah, I have, and I've been fortunate enough where you get some reasonable judges, which I found most of them were reasonable. They'll allow it because they see that the person sitting in front of them may not know anything. So the question is it more to the advantage of the self-rep to have me there than not having me there? And I think, anyone after 2 minutes of, not because I'm so smart, just because I've done my homework, and maybe the person in that situation hasn't had time or just hit them that they're being arrested and processed, where I was processed a year before and learning all that stuff. So a lot of times judges will allow it. And it's originally I did it through Mackenzie Friend, which allows you to assist and help. And through the court's decision or their discretion, they'll allow you to address the court. Or you can do it through, which is a better one, power of attorney. And you actually have a signed document where you're acting as power of attorney. And then you can actually, again, with permission from the judge, and most of the time they will agree, maybe 3/4 or 20% they won't. They'll allow me to speak and make arguments and address witnesses, etc. So I've been fortunate that way.
This is up to the judge to decide whether or not you can be there or not?
I mean, it's the judge's ruling. So, I mean, you could always appeal it if they say no, but you have the case law, and plus you've got in the criminal code that you're allowed to as per power of attorney. You just can't go in there. Obviously, I can't charge people. It's all for free. So as long as I tell the truth, which is I'm doing it all for free, it's not paying the bills, and I'm there to only assist and help address the court. I have no financial gain whatsoever. If you explain all that up front, which is what I do from the very, very beginning, usually a reasonable judge will say, yeah, okay, that makes sense. And like I said,
have you ever had a situation where a judge goes, all right, we'll allow this, and then a couple of days later, the judge kind of pulls you aside and says, you know what, Dave, you're doing a great job up there. Like, holy crap, I didn't believe that you could do something like this. Are they ever actually surprised when they hear what comes out of your mouth sometimes?
Yeah, I had a judge one time, actually. He actually said he wanted to come back from vacation just to see the bail review finish, because it was a 2-day one. But yeah, usually they don't they keep that stuff to themselves. But I have crowns that come to me and talk to me on the side, and you learn really quick how the system works. And if you abide by the rules, obviously take off your hat, say your honor, et cetera, you can get a lot done. I know a lot of people have lost faith in the system, but believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, there are some good, honest judges out there. I mean, I can even give you names right now of honest judges. And there are ones that will just, in my opinion, I don't want to go down the defamation road here, but, obviously that, are on the take. And it becomes very obvious that they're on the take. And
Yeah.
sometimes you see crowns do what's called judge juggling. Sorry, judge shopping. Sorry. Go ahead.
Right, and that I think that's something you were telling me about before. So the advantage to being in a situation like yours is you can say these things publicly and not get disbarred, right? I mean, you don't have to worry about being disbarred by the Ontario Law Association or wherever else because you've never been to the bar in the first place. You're just a guy who knows a lot of stuff about Canadian law and can advise people.
Yeah, so no, I have been a couple of times threatened by some crowns and judges that say, "Oh, you're going to be in contravene of the Barristers Act, etc." But I mean, I know it doesn't go anywhere because I'm not charging people money, right? So that's the thing. If it's an exchange of money, and I'm charging for legal service, just like I was pretending I was a doctor, then that would be a lot different. Once they understand that I'm there only to help, and I have no financial gain except to see a better Canada. The reasonable ones will say, yeah, that's cool with me, and don't even fight me on it. I've had crowns fight me on it. This is ridiculous. I've never seen this before. How is he allowed to do this? That kind of stuff. But I mean, it's didn't really intimidate me. But I've been threatened a few times about that I'd be in contributing.
Well,
but
they've never seen this before because there's never been such ridiculous charges en masse across the country as there have been in the past 3 or 4 years, where people go out and, first of all, I mean, these people who have gone out to protests like you have, like I have, like everybody who is watching this has, at one point or other in the past 4 years, has never ever been out to a protest before in their lives. But they saw what was going on in this country and they said, I got to do something. I'm going to go to the legislature. I'm going to go to Queen's Park. I'm going to go and fight this thing. I'm going to go to City Hall. I'm going to stand there with 50, 500, 5,000 of common sense people I stand shoulder to shoulder with, and we are going to protest this. Never, Dave, in a million years would anybody think, because these crowds too have been mostly peaceful. The ones that I've seen anyway. I mean, sure, there's a few wackadoos who show up from time to time, agitators, people trying to cause a problem. But for the most part, what we're seeing is just average people who live in suburbia, who want to come out and say enough is enough. And so the police, in order to quell this, to stem this tide, I suppose, have started to dig up charges that maybe haven't even been used in years. Against and if these cops are looking at these people like some grandma, 75 years old, lives out in Brampton, right? She's never ever been to one of these things before. Or Etobicoke, never been to, never ever one of these things. She's in a wheelchair. Cop's going to say, hey, lady, here's a ticket for trespass or what. I've never seen trespass used more in my entire life. Even still, even now with school boards and city and town councils and all of that I've seen in the past year or 2 years. It's absolutely crazy, right? So for that crown to say, I have never seen this before, of course they haven't seen this before. It's a brand new thing. How many people like you are there out there? Legal advocates, don't charge money.
Well, there's a few of us. The name escapes me. There's a few of us that do this. I mean, there's not. I would if I won the lottery tomorrow. I mean, I would literally drop everything I'm doing and just do this full time. And I would literally just hang out by the Ottawa courthouse and just play ambulance chaser and just. Are you charged for something freedom related? No. Okay. Yes. Okay. Let's talk. Right. I mean that's what I would do. Like I said, how I get off and what's this not just the awakening, but for me, the thrill I get out of it, the accolades is to help people and to also to be a part of anything that can change law. One thing that was very disgusting was that people, when they attended the protest, one guy, I'll give you an example, Mr. Carr, I represented him in a bail review that's in Superior Court. And his conditions, I thought, what am I reading here? They were worse than mine. And he went to jail for 41 days. in a cell full of piss and shit. I kid you not, 41 days. And I think a total of maybe, I think it was like 23 minutes of light or something like that outside. Anyway, this guy had conditions that he couldn't even join a Facebook group that talked about the you know what, the jibby jabber, or discuss it. And I'm thinking to myself, wait a second, I thought he was arrested for mischief. What's he being charged? So it just becomes so obvious that the whole thing is just this political game, and they're using these people as tools. They're going after people they consider leaders to shut them up, and they wanted him to not post on social media. They called him in his disclosure the middleman between the leaders, and that's why it was very, very important that he couldn't be on social media. So that one was one of my faves in terms of president, because that now prevents them, if they ever do this shit again. Sorry for the French, my boy, or the bad language. They can't just say, okay, you lose your social media rights, because now we've got a president that says it's unconstitutional, and everyone has the right to freedom of speech, and you can't just take away someone's social media. And we got that by a great judge, an honest judge who saw logic, and got that actually times two. Another one was Mr. Blanchfield. Same thing. He was in Rolling Thunder, given conditions he couldn't go on social media. Again, I'm disgusted when I see this, because why can't he talk about Justin Trudeau or whoever he wants? But if he does that, he goes to jail and gets arrested for breach. And then we got that one. We got that one as well. So that's so freedom. My favorite is always freedom of speech. If you don't have freedom of speech, you've got nothing, because without freedom of speech, you don't have freedom of religion. You can't do assembly. You got nothing. And then a freedom of assembly would be my second favorite. So if I get wins like those, that's also another motivation of mine, because then you can change law in the country, because we live in a common law country based on precedents. Anything that happens in these courts, especially the higher you go, Superior Court and above, has an effect on everyone else moving forward.
So what cases have you been involved with that have been kind of landmark for you? What are you most proud of so far in these last few years?
I mean, most of them are end up being dropped. So someone will just call me randomly, hey, I've got this bylaw ticket. I'm part of the 880 club, and I would say, well, when did you get the ticket? 19 months ago. Great. Here's how you do an 11B, and that's it. And they get dropped, or they might go to court, maybe give them some information how they can defend themselves, and then the Crown will just drop it last minute, no questions asked. Most of these things are dropped because they don't want rulings that can affect them, which surprised me even with Byron Carr and Blanchfield, because I thought to myself, they're going to fight me on the social media, because if they try and pull this again, it's and I get a judge who rules in my favor, that's not good for them. So I really thought, just like the other ones, they're going to drop it. But most of the time they end up dropping them. Maybe
before,
like 1% actually go to trial between all the criminal charges and the bylaw tickets, etc. I mean, a lot do go to trial. 1% still a lot, but the majority of and they just say that it's not in the interest of the public. That's what they get away with, right? And then of course, it's a win, but it's not a precedent. It's not precedent setting.
Right, and we need more precedent set so these bozos can't do it again. Can you please tell us about the Chris Weisdorf ruling from last week, because this is one that you were very, very, very happy about.
Yeah, this is another guy who is not a lawyer, very bright individual representing Miss Fernando. This was a case involving, as everyone knows, if you were to cross the border, you were in many cases forced to take a PCR test, and if you didn't, you'd be in violation of the Quarantine Act. And of course, they started I think at $1,000, and it went to $3,000, and then it went to $6,000, because people weren't learning their lesson. They were still crossing that border without providing their DNA and shoving up their nose. And so many people were again, process being the punishment. We're going through that process, disclosure, show up again. And by the way, with the self-reps, they really nail you. They really nail you to the wall, because what they do is all the lawyers and paralegals go first. So if you have an appearance at 10 a.m., they're really sneaky. Well, not sneaky, but this is what they do. They'll, in most cases, you go at the end. You're basically the crap left over as a self-rep. So the lawyers and paralegals always get president, or always get the front of the line. So you'll end up having a 10 o'clock appointment, and you're sitting all day till 4 o'clock. And if you leave, they could be a bench warrant for your arrest, as if they have a valid reason or going to the hospital or whatever the case.
That is so shady.
That's
man.
what they.
Seriously.
That's what they do. That happened to me every single time. But going back to Chris. Sorry, I don't want to lose track. So they were getting PCR tests. He had represented Ms. Fernando in provincial court. They had lost for that Quarantine Act ticket, and then he appealed it for her at the Ontario Court of Justice level in Ontario.
Now, what were they contesting, Dave? Were they contesting the PCR test itself?
So there's a number of things that he put in his arguments. This is his case, or this is purely from an observer. I didn't help him at all in this. This is his baby. But as far as I know from my conversation with him, is that there were a number of issues that he brought up. One of them was rights violations. There was some great case law. He had a huge book of authorities, which is basically another word for saying lots of case law. And the prime one was drum roll, Section 14 of the Quarantine Act. And in that section, excuse me, just coughing a little bit. They've been raining down heavily with the geoengineering the last couple of weeks, so everyone I know is getting sick. Gotcha. Sorry. I love how I can say that. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Love you. Yep. Okay, so in section in section 14 of the Quarantine Act, I have the quote here. Let me just find it. So it says this in the Quarantine Act: any qualified person authorized by the minister may, to determine whether a traveler has a communicable disease or symptoms of one, use any screening technology authorized by the minister that does not involve the entry into the traveler's body of any instrument or other foreign body. So basically, it's telling you that they can't stick something in you, because that would be a violation of the act. I watched when Chris was, because he had two dates. One was the decision, one was when he had made arguments and submissions. Chris do a great job on that, and the Crown had said, well, a swab is not entering the body. I kid you not. He actually said that. I'm sort of.
You mean the swab that goes violently all the way up your nose does not enter the body?
Squishes your brain. People get blood coming out sometimes. But yes, that was not, apparently that didn't go in your body. And he goes, it's not the same thing as like a needle or this or that. So you're saying it has to break the skin to go? How does that make any sense? Anyway, so he was acting all confident, this Crown, and very pompous, that he was right and that was it, and the judge had just dismissed this appeal. Why are we even here? Is sort of his attitude, and he had that attitude the entire time. Anyway, the judge reviewed all the paperwork, and he said, listen, I'm going to keep things very simple, and I'm just sort of paraphrasing here. I'm looking at Section 14. It's pretty cut and dry. They presented this as their argument, and I'm going to say acquit. So the judge acquits Ms. Fernando through the job of Chris Weisdorf, and said that 14 was a violation. And so now anyone that's currently in court appealing it, they can now try and get this overturned and use that as a case law. Now, it's not in a higher court, but in the end, if they, I doubt that they're going to appeal it, because I think if they appeal it, they're going to do Chris a solid, because there's nowhere for a judge to go on this. It's to me, it's black and white. So if they're smart, I think they'll just leave it as is in Ontario Court of Justice. But in the end, because of this decision, it now is going to affect everyone else who is now fighting this ticket, or who's currently who lost and is currently appealing it. So it's definitely a big win for bodily autonomy. That's for sure. Security of person, in my opinion.
So yeah, but that's a constitutional argument, right? Security of the person. And
yes. So yes, you're right. You're right. So it wasn't. Those were presented as arguments, but the judge wanted to keep things simple and said Section 14. If you hear some noise, it's raining over here, so I apologize. But
okay.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Let me ask you why the judge rejected hearing the Bill of Rights in this particular case. Do you know?
So again, strictly from an observer point of view, the judge was clear that there was really no need in going there or going that direction, because the issue in his mind was very simple. It's a violation of Section 14. Now, having said that,
Section 14 of the Quarantine Act of
sorry,
Ontario?
of the Quarantine Act. Yes,
Of Ontario?
no, it's a federal act.
The federal one, okay. So the violation of Section 14, so that's applicable anywhere in Canada. But so I guess the judge felt we don't have to use the Bill of Rights in this situation because we've got that violation of Section 14. Have you seen a case, because I've heard a lot of people say we've tried to use the Bill of Rights in certain cases, and the judge flat out just says, no, we're going to reject usage of that. I don't know of any cases that have actually successfully argued the Bill of Rights. Have you seen that?
Oh, there's lots of them. Now they're all in Superior Court, and I can tell you the reason for that. And it's, in my opinion, they're dirty. I call it their dirty little secret. But there's many wins. There's actually, I wish I had it in front of me right now, but there's a case where judges were I forget what section, but they quoted a certain section of the Bill of Rights because it was they weren't getting their pension or something like that. And this is it was part of the Judges Act. So we're talking, high judges here in Canada using the Bill of Rights post charter, not pre charter, post charter, not even mention the charter, and then won their case. That's just one of many examples. There's a list I could probably post in the comments later of all the wins with the bill, but they're almost all in Superior Court or above. Now, with Ontario Court of Justice, that's a different little situation, because I learned also there's a difference between what's called statute court and inherent jurisdiction. And statute court with Ontario Court of Justice means that they don't recognize your common law rights or your rights unless you want to do what's called a charter challenge. And it's basically their way of keeping you in this little box. And then when you do the charter, we all know what happened with that, with the Church of God, the Toronto District School Board, the churches in Manitoba, etc.
Section 1 every time, yeah.
The Mack truck clause, Section 1. I even have a video, a friend of mine getting arrested, the cop actually quoting, and he would say, Dermot would say, hey, don't you believe in the charter? Why are you doing this? Well, Section 1, blah, blah. So they were the cops were even given a script about Section 1, almost like this was planned. And we all know it was for decades. So, shocker. But yeah, no. So they keep you in that little box, and that's why you're not going to find wins with the bill in Ontario Court of Justice, or even wins where it's strictly 100% based on common law. Through let's say you have the right to protest because of R versus Smith or whatever. Now, if some people think, okay, that's crazy because 95% of all criminal trials are done in at least Ontario Court of Justice and not Superior Court. Ask yourself this question: why is it that every bail review is done in Superior Court? What's the point of doing it there? If you're already in Ontario Court of Justice fighting for your rights, why would you need to up it to Superior? It makes no sense. That's because Superior has inherent jurisdiction, which means that you can bring up case law or the Bill of Rights or anything you want, and the judge can use that as a piece of authority to rule in your favor, because the judge always needs, he or she always asks, where does my authority come from, right?
Right.
And in the very beginning, I was told I can't do this here, Mr. Freedom. This is statute court, and I would realize, pretty soon, okay, I get it. So we
Dave,
can't talk about
what is the hierarchy? What is the hierarchy of the courts? Is it pretty much the same in all the provinces? You start off with the low court and you move up to Superior Court, and then you can go federal. How does this work exactly?
Yeah. So in Chris's case, it was the lowest, which is traffic ticket court. And then when he appealed it, he went to Ontario Court of Justice, which is the same, it's provincial court, same thing, right? And then after that, you've got Superior Court, or in some cases divisional, if it's like a civil case or whatever the case. But Superior Court, then you've got Ontario Court of Appeals, and then you've got Supreme Court of Canada. And you're almost guaranteed to get into, unless you're making just ridiculous arguments, you're guaranteed to get leave of appeal, not guaranteed, but almost, in Superior and Ontario Court of Justice. Sorry, Ontario Court of Appeal. but Supreme has changed it. I think before it was almost, wasn't guaranteed, but it was high likelihood you can get to the Supreme Court of Canada. Now I think it's 1 out of 60 or something like that, some ridiculous numbers. So many people are denied. In fact, the Church of God, they had lost in Ontario Court of Appeals using the charter, and they were denied leave of appeal in the Supreme Court of Canada. Because why would we allow them to go there on such a politically charged issue, right? That doesn't make any sense.
So you've got cases in Superior Court that have won using the Bill of Rights?
Yeah, so in the case of it's a little taboo. A lot of judges, they prefer the old way, the charter. And I'm not saying the charter. The charter has some uses. I mean, you can, if you want to use an 11B, which means delay of trial, that's a great way to get it thrown out. In terms of freedom of speech or assembly, that's a little bit different, because if it's politically charged and they've already got 1,000 precedents already set through Section 1. You don't really have much of a hope. I mean, you can still fight it. But that was freedom. The judge in that ruling used specifically freedom of speech, and freedom of speech is only in the bill. It's only freedom of expression in the charter. And that was both in Blanchfield and in Carr.
So it depends on the wording that you use when you come in to the judge and say, I'm talking about freedom of speech in the Bill of Rights. I don't see why it can't be argued in any court.
Yeah, well, you can't really argue. Well, not really, but the rules are, because it applies only to federal. It's federal statute, right? So you can't use it in. I see it differently, because in my personal view, and I know I'm wrong in terms of how it's written, because it says that you can only use it for in federal legislation, right? So it has to be part of the criminal code, which is a federally regulated set of codes. But for a traffic ticket, or that part of that 880 club for a bylaw. The charter
880 club
remedy. Yeah. And so people have tried it. It hasn't been successful in that regard. But for anything criminal, no doubt, there's many judges have already told me. I've got transcripts, rulings where they say yes, the bill applies. There's misinformation out there. Like Wikipedia is one, the first that pops up if you say, "Oh, Canadian Bill of Rights. What's this all about?" And the first thing it says is the charter supersedes it, which is not true at all. You can use the bill and it's active, and I've got rulings of judges saying that it is active and you can use it. But again, lots of misinformation out there. I like it because there's no Section 1 clause, right? The Bill of Rights.
Yeah.
When Diefenbaker made this thing in 1960, there has to be a federal act of parliament that expressly states we're going to violate your rights. So they have to say, okay, not only we're going to we're going to make this stay-at-home order, but we're going to say that we're going to violate your freedom of assembly, blah blah blah, and there has to be a federal act that does that. So it's it is possible, but it's a very, very long process. Obviously, if it was easy, they would have done it. But the charter is easy because it's 100%, judge discretion. Okay, well, Section 1 says this, and obviously there was a pandemic going on, so therefore.
Section 1.
Yeah. Exactly.
Dave, what are the most important cases ongoing in this country right now? And we know about Tamara and Chris, and they're going to be going back at some point. We've got Pat King, we've got Chris Carbert and Tony Olenek, the Coots 2. We've got Helen Gruss, but she's not going back, and that's not even a court case yet. She's going back, but not until January. What are the biggest, most important, most precedent-setting cases? What are they trying to use right now? What is the Crown trying to use right now to make things even more difficult for us?
Yeah, I'll say this, because a lot of people think we've already. So we haven't fallen to communism yet. So people don't have to panic. I know it looks bad. I know that like I said, the process of punishment, they can keep you in limbo for a year or 2 years, and you're thinking, what's going on here? But if we have fallen to communism, they wouldn't need to go through all these lengths of trying to get these court decisions and judge shop. And, this takes a lot of effort. It's a coordinated effort. And, just the fact that they put all this effort into Colin McDonald, for example, shows you just how important that case is. I'll just give the rundown of, in my opinion, probably the most significant 3 or 4 cases in Canada that will change, the law. and that will affect every single person in this country if they value freedom of speech and assembly. And I would say Colin McDonald is up there because that one is so dangerous that if they introduce bylaws, let's say the bird flu or climate change, 50-minute cities or whatever, and I know this is going to sound ridiculous, but you could, in theory, if they put a bylaw like this out again, and you leave your house and you're not going to go get groceries, you just want to go to the park, they could not only arrest you, but they can throw you in jail. And and I know it sounds ridiculous, but it actually is just that. So Colin is an example of someone that was arrested, charged the same as myself, common nuisance. I'll back it up just by saying there was probably thousands of people, let's say hundreds to maybe 1,000, I don't know exactly, but I know many, charged across Canada with common nuisance originally who were protesting against the mandates. Every single one, including myself, as I mentioned, was dropped. Some went to just the cusp of trial, but they were all dropped. For whatever reason, they chose Mr. McDonald as the test case. So he's the case. And what that means in legal terms is it's the first of its kind. It's the first of its kind that the Crown had nothing in terms of previous presidents, that they were using an HIV case from 1992, I believe, of a guy who intentionally spread HIV with partners, and they would use that as a comparison to this common nuisance charge of stepping outside your house and protesting. This is how new this is, right? But they were just so desperate that where does this come from? How does that even relate?
Anyway, I think I had Colin on not so long ago. Maybe, yeah, because that was the night you came on. That's right. So that's a very, very
that was my cameo.
Case. Right.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
When is that going to be decided? Do we know?
So that's going to be August 16th. We're still tweaking the three factums. So I'll just say, I'll try and do it quickly. So he's got the first one. So he won his first trial, and the Crown is appealing that. He lost his second one with a judge who saw, surprise, surprise, exactly the opposite as the first judge. And then he had, and then also he was sentenced with a criminal record, and I think the fine was $7,000. But the Crown is now appealing. They're appealing the criminal record and $7,000, saying that's not good enough. We want criminal record, fine, and we want jail. We want jail. And the reason why the jail is so key is because next time they can go after the leaders, they can, based on common law, previous president said in this case, Superior Court, they can now arrest you, and if you're guilty, give you jail time. So they're going all out, and they're using him as this tool to make this happen. They're a freeway to communism.
To remind me and everybody else again, what exactly did he or didn't he do?
Sorry, so he was just like me. He was exactly the same thing I did, protested peacefully. Instead of Toronto, in my case, his was Niagara Falls. He had protested there, I think, in April 2021. He actually had, he had two trials. That's why I said he won the first one, or two charges. Won the first one, lost the second one, and now he's dealing with his sentencing. But he was arrested for common nuisance for basically stepping outside his house and protesting. Outside, of course.
And so they're looking for jail time, and if they win this thing, then that sets a terrible precedent for the rest of the country, obviously.
Yeah. They don't even care about Colin. They could give two what's about what happens to him. He's just a test case, and they need it to work out. And what I'm trying to do is bring awareness. He does need a little bit more money on the funding because we want more eyes to look at the factums.
You know what really we'll do is
they're shaping out. Yeah, go ahead.
We'll get him on, Dave, before August 16th. That ruling comes out, because I'd like to see how he's doing and just catch up with him. We got to move on here. What are the next important cases?
Yeah, I would also say another one. I'm probably going to do a video on this one on R versus Rumlewski. And that one is, if you were affected by the Freedom Convoy, your case, I don't care who you are, is going to hinge on this person's case. And so Mr. Rumlewski, the quick background, was arrested, just like many other people during the Freedom Convoy 2022, arrested for mischief, obstruction, the usual that shows up. He was the first one to win, got an honest judge at that time. I think it was Justice Wadden, I want to say. And of course, that wasn't good, because of course, if he wins, what about these hundreds of people in court? We got a problem on our hand, boys. We got to fix this. So what they did is they appealed it with our money. The government appealed it with our government money because that wasn't good enough that a judge decided that he was innocent, and he had lost in that appeal. Put together a good case in Superior Court, and right now he's fighting in Ontario Court of Appeals, fighting that loss in Superior. And the really scary thing about that one is that how they're getting people in mischief is because they're not using the EA anymore. They knew that a decision like Justice Mosley would come by. That's the guy that decided that it was people's rights to protest. What they did is what they're doing is they're saying that if you showed up to a protest, we don't care who you are. Is if you showed up, we're just going to say you're party to an offense. But for the first time in history, we're not going to tell you who that party is. So you're now a party to offense to this mysterious party with no name. And I looked it up and did all the research. You're not going to find any case in Canley or anywhere in legal database that's going to show you someone convicted where there's no actual party. They're just saying that if you showed up, there was a protest and maybe some guy threw a rock and maybe this guy blocked the bridge, whatever, you're a party and we're not going to give you any names, you're guilty. So that one's very dangerous as well. So everyone in trial, Pat King, Tamara Leach, Chris Barber, Harold, James Botter, Jean-Philippe, Byron Carr, the list goes on and on. They all hinge on this guy's case. And just to give you an idea of how significant it is, we did a access to justice motion for Mr. Carr a couple weeks ago, and the Crown was switched out last minute. This was basically because we're asking for some for the government to cover half the transcripts. We only raised about $1,200. He needs $3,200 the transcripts to appeal it. And it's a very simple thing. It might take 10, 20 minutes. I've done that before. It's an access to justice motion saying that basically, you're preventing him from having access to justice by the simple fact that he can't afford it. And he was on workman's comp because he had injured himself in his job. So now he potentially qualified to try and get that money. So of course they switched Crowns last minute. We're in there. This guy's doing this beautiful presentation about how, sorry. Foul, sorry.
It's all right. The chemtrails, man, they're thick this week.
I know. It is. I wasn't even joking about that. Anyway, he's doing this beautiful presentation of how anyone that shows up is a party to an offense and using, the terms that they wanted very aggressively and trying to force this judge in his own aggressive manner to say that he shouldn't get the money because there's very little chance of success. And he wanted that ruling right there and then. It dawned on me what he was doing. He was trying to get a ruling in Superior Court because that's where we're at this motion, a level above Ontario Court of Justice, and he wanted to use that, in my opinion, against Mr. Rumlewski. So Mr. Rumlewski is a big fish, and he was an example of someone who is just in the way, who could be an opportunity to use against Rumlewski case, because Rumlewski loses, they all lose. Even if Chris Tamara win tomorrow, the issue is they can overturn it in Superior Court if Rumlewski loses in Ontario Court of Justice. So that's why that one is really important. I'll go on. What was the other one?
So the Rumlewski case is more advanced than all of the other ones. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
2 levels above advanced. Yes. Yeah, because most of them are in Ontario Court of Justice. I believe Hillier is in Superior because he's using a jury. But yes. So yes, it hinges on him, and that's again because we live in a common law country, and now again, you can get off if they drop the charges. Maybe you had no right to counsel.
Have you ever seen a situation where a judge in a lower court will completely ignore a precedent from a higher court because it's wrong?
Yeah. So actually, in Colin's case, we were talking about. I call it the bastard court, where they don't recognize common law rights. Now they say they do, but I have yet to see any wins strictly based on a case law in Ontario Court of Justice. Only in Superior you'll see that. Now maybe someone could prove me wrong, but I haven't seen it yet. But in the 15-page decision or ruling by the judge that found Mr. McDonald guilty, he doesn't mention the one strongest argument we have besides the bill, the strongest, which is R versus Sharma. And he in his trial, we mentioned that a million times, emphasized the significance in it. And that's a Supreme Court decision that says that you cannot escalate a bylaw into a criminal code. End of story. Say goodnight, full stop. And that alone should shut it down. But it's interesting how in 15 pages of his just yakking on and on about how he was irresponsible for going outside, they don't mention Sharma. So I'm hoping that now we're in the inherent jurisdiction Superior Court, they're going to recognize, oh yeah, we do have R versus Sharma, and he should be acquitted. That's what should happen. So that will be interesting to see what happens in Superior Court. But that, to answer your question, that's just one example of how they didn't recognize the common law right, and that common law right was R versus Sharma.
What
Rubbed
percentage
in his face many times.
What percentage of judges that you've seen would you say are corrupt on the take?
So I've probably been in front of at least 20 plus different judges in just Ottawa alone. So I'll just be careful with the defamation side here, but I can tell you.
You're not naming names. You're not naming names, man. You're just telling me what you think.
Well, I'll tell you some of the good ones based on rulings I've read. And and not because
I wouldn't even name any names on the good ones. Okay. Just a percentage.
Fair enough.
Just,
you know what? Yes, you're right. You're right. Fair enough. Yeah. So if I had to, that's a hard thing to say. I mean, that's strictly
50-50? Like, yeah, I know, but it's your opinion, and that's. I mean, you've been involved.
So
in this.
My opinion is, I think that the majority of them are actually. I know some people are going to say, no, they're not. So, I think they're all corrupt. But my feeling is at least 50 to 80%, I know it's a big swing there, are on our side. They don't want to see communism. They all know that, in the end, it doesn't benefit anybody. And then I've seen many who you could just tell that the decision has already been made. I find sometimes the nicer they are, the more they're going to stick it to you, because that's their game, right? They obviously want to pretend that they're being completely impartial.
And this 20 to 50%, Dave, this 20 to 50% of possibly, in your opinion, paid off judges, are they in the higher or the lower courts? Or are they evenly distributed?
I mean, this is such a, because here's the thing, right? Like, I'm giving you my opinion based on, I've been practicing, I don't practice law for like 40 years, right? So
no, I know, but I'm asking your opinion. You've seen this, you've been involved. Yeah. You know.
So I'm only giving it to you based on limited numbers, not like I've seen thousands of judges, right? So it's maybe not necessarily a fair statistic, but I mean, I don't know. I might even say 50-50. I might even say even 80% our side. It's hard to say. I mean, there's just because someone doesn't agree with me doesn't mean that they're corrupt. I look at the rulings and I say to myself, does this make any sense? Let's start from there. Right. Like if that and it's not about the jab or if you're left or right leaning, it just doesn't make any sense. And in my view, some of the judges that when I see these rulings, it's like you could just tell they didn't even write it.
Yeah, and well, like some of them you see one of these rulings and you go, there is absolutely no way that any rational-minded human being could ever come to this conclusion and explain it. Right?
Yep. That's right. And just like police, we have good police too. Helen Groos is one. Sergeant Paul Brown, Peel Police, who didn't want to do shut down Huff Jim. I mean, they're out there, right? There's many people on our side. A lot don't speak up in fear of losing their job. Understandable. But my job also, and not just help people, is to try and bring awareness to these cases and expose these people. Here's who's doing this to us, right? This idea that you're just doing your job doesn't cut it. I mean, you're literally bringing in communism at this point by going along with this, especially in Colin's case.
Yeah.
So going back to
one more, we got time for one more case. One of the important ones. So you've mentioned Colin McDonald, and you've mentioned Ramuski. What's number 3?
Okay, if you're going to put pressure on me for the third, then I'm going to definitely say Helen Groos. Helen Groos. I was able to speak to her on the phone. Just a amazing soul, wonderful human being, doing it for the right reasons, conviction in God. She is a woman that was a detective who was investigating a link between infant deaths and the jabber.
Yep.
And now is being punished through a tribunal. It's what I've seen. I was fortunate enough to go to at least one of the dates that she had, and I just that alone, just complete turn off by, in my opinion, how corrupt it is. The adjudicator, because he's not a judge, he's a retired I think officer of some sort. had denied her 5 expert witnesses, incredible witnesses that could back up a story. The stats that she presented, which were just mind-blowing stats about, I think it was 30 out of 31 infants that had died due to this.
No, we know the stats. We pretty much know what's going on with that. But why is this one so important? Why?
And so that's important because it changes the way officers conduct business in Canada. If she loses, it sends a giant signal that if you don't do as you're told, and there's consequences, and not just that, but you can't even use discretion. Maybe something's politically charged. Maybe the next bird flu or the next whatever, and you see there's a crime happening right in front of you, but now you're thinking, well, look what happened to her.
Right. Well, look, so dude, we're already seeing politically motivated policing or non-motivated policing, as the case may be. I mean, we're letting naked people thrust their junk in kids' faces at pride parades all over the country, and police are doing nothing about it. And we know that that's a criminal code offense. We know that it is, but they're not doing anything about it. And the reason for that, you think that there's any police officer that would actually allow that? Or is it coming from above and above? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. And we have good ones. We have lots of good cops. The problem is we don't want to now put the good ones in this box where they're going to be fearful of a tribunal, and because look what happened to Helen. This is the first of its kind as well, right? It's also precedent setting as well, in the sense that she should have access to investigate someone that is a crime and not be told because it's politically charged. Anyway, I won't get into the details about how the intricacies of how corrupt it was and how they, use a CBC reporter and anyway, but we'll get to that. But those are the three. Those are definitely 3 big ones. I have more, but I won't get into it. I know that I just noticed it's past 10 o'clock, and you probably got things to do. I
gotta move on, man. But I want to get you back, you and Colin, before the ruling on the 16th of August, so that because you say that's the biggest case in the country that could be the tipping point between freedom and communism, and because you say that. And one thing about you, Dave, whenever you send me a message telling me that something is important, I kind of sit up and go, ooh, Dave said this is important, so I want to know why. You and I'll talk, and so I'm happy that you've come on the show tonight to talk to people and to let them know, not just that you've been working pro bono, let's call it, on other people's behalf to help them get out of bad situations, but you are well versed in everything that you're doing, and there's others like you, and people don't really understand, how many fronts we're fighting this war on, and what you guys are doing, you and people like Chris Weisdorf, is absolutely amazing. And the more, and I know that you're doing it for free, and that you're probably going to be getting like 80 million emails after the show is over tonight. Can you help me, Dave? I don't know how you have the time for it. And I know that you look at probably each case. Well, you look at it on a case-by-case basis and go, is this important? Is this not important? How can I help this person? And so on and so on. So I want to thank you for everything that you are doing and have done and will do as we move forward. But how can people find you? Because you've been making some excellent videos as well describing these cases too.
Yeah, no, I'm on all platforms, so Facebook, Twitter, or X or whatever, TikTok, etc. And I'll just say this: that they are watching what we're doing, so it's important awareness gets out there. The Crown has even brought the Facebook posts that I've done as exhibits in other people's trials to get me out. So they're watching these videos. They're very aware. I was very happy how Helen's video turned out because a lot of people started talking about it. I think it needed to have a quick, less than 10-minute documentary explaining, who this hero is. And I, quite frankly, was almost starstruck even being in contact with her. I mean, she's just a wonderful person. But yeah, awareness is key here because it's really all we got at this point. And most people don't want communism. So that's a plus for us. And you can reach me on those platforms.
Okay, man.
And so one last thing, if you want to look at Colin, there's a fundraiser on my Facebook for Colin's. He could use at least another few $1,000s to get more eyes on the factum with the lawyer we're using, and we also have a paralegal. So we're making sure that thing is rock solid, and then also Byron Carr for the transcripts. We're maybe short about, I think about $1,500 or something like that.
Okay,
That's all.
man. Thank you. Look for Dave Freedom on our socials, and thank you, Dave, for coming on tonight. Really appreciate it, man. Have a great night. We'll talk again before August the 16th.
Thanks for having me. Take care.
Okay, take it easy. There is Dave Freedom doing a lot of good for people under the cover of night. I still have yet to see his face, even when he and I are talking, just he and I, and not you guys, in the afternoon or on a weekend or something, discussing a case or whatever on the phone. I still haven't seen his face. I don't know, but I think that this is good, that he stays anonymous so that the Crown, when he does walk into a case, can't see him coming. We still have so much more to discuss tonight, you guys. We're going to do that in the extension on shadowdavis.com. So for you all access members, we'll see you there in just a couple of minutes. For everybody else, by the way, for everybody else, go ahead and join. I got another threat from Facebook today saying that don't lose your page, community standards violation. And then they showed me a post and I went, what is a violation about this? And of course, and then I had to go and contest it, and I haven't seen what the results are yet because I had to come here and do the show. So I would imagine that my Facebook feed tonight is somewhat stymied. So go ahead and join shadowdavis.com. Guaranteed, no censorship. We'll see all access members for the extension in just a couple of minutes. For everybody else, I will catch you tomorrow night at 8 o'clock Central for another Shadow at Night live stream. Love you all, appreciate you all, and I will talk to you soon. Bye for now.